what they said is that they're going to have, by the time Exxon is done, can you imagine all those fields that they discovered? They're going to have a lot of FPSOs out there, and each FPSO needs 5 supply vessels. So you can imagine the ships moving back and forth from port to wherever. I think everyone in Guyana is going to be employed. I don't think it's going to be, I mean, Guyana has a small population, that's the critical thing. And I think everyone who's looking for a job, that's just my guess. I mean, because I've seen it. I mean, I see what happened in Saudi Arabia when they discovered oil and the fact that there were jobs for everyone. But there's more than enough people are going to be coming to Guyana to find work. I mean, there's going to be jobs for everyone. I don't see how it couldn't be. Guyana has one of the smallest population. I can tell when Exxon discovered this, my friends over at Exxon were saying, whoa, 750 people and this is what they found. Amazing, absolutely amazing. Anyway, here's the FPSO, and it's got living quarters, topsides, all sorts of things go on in there. These are huge tankers which they took and converted to FPSOs. The fluid comes up here, there's even sections, where compressors, as a matter of fact, that's what's happening now with the FPSOs in Guyana. That's why they're flaring so much gas. The compressors which they bought from Germany has broken down. They can't compress the gas, so they have to flare it. And there's a lot going on in Guyana now concerning that, because one of the area which I'm not going to get in a whole lot, we touch on a little bit, is the environment. Guyana is unique in the sense that Guyana has 85% virgin rainforest. Virgin rainforest. We're a carbon sink in Guyana. People were talking about buying offsets in Guyana, carbon offsets from Guyana, and we don't want to pollute it. So people are beginning to wonder, do we need this oil and gas? But I mean, I don't see how personally, I think it's still the best thing for Guyana, because we can use that revenue to do the things we've always wanted to do. That's what I see. But that's going off the topic. Okay, here's our next slide. This is a plain view of the FPSO, and it shows all the modules it contains and whatnot. It's got place for gas injection, the compressors they need. They've got stuff for storage and for processing the oil that they bring out, the separation units, all those things they have. All that is done in the FPSO. And these FPSOs have to be maintained. And they need support personnel to do that. They have to be painted. I mean, the salt water up there, the rusting, all that stuff that goes on. I mean, there's a lot of activity going on in an FPSO. So, again, capacity building, I'm not going to talk too much about. I think that'll be over. I think Fareed is supposed to give you some more stuff about that, but I mean, I've alluded to a lot of it. Guyana is going to need a lot of facilities set up. They're going to need training. They're going to need lots of stuff people need to get involved with. The university is going to have to produce, reservoir engineers, petroleum engineers. Again, as I said, I refer to the fact that Guyana can actually use some of its revenue. Renewable energies would probably be a good area to get into. We actually don't have to use any of this hydrocarbon. We have, at last check, I think that it said they had 50 or 60 sites for hydroelectricity in Guyana. We can look at solar, we can look at wind. I was over in the Essequibo River there, right at the mouth there. And the wind was blowing something off in the evening. I mean, the offshore wind energy is this big thing. This is an area that Guyana can probably get into. The previous administration had talked about green plan for green development for Guyana, and I think that's a vision that can actually come true. But anyway, what I want to say, a key point is don't confuse local content with just fill in the workforce. You need to make sure that people are invested in Guyana and doing some of the things that we want to do. I think Guyana can look at, I mean, in the universities, we can think about investing in new battery storage technology, which is really a big area right now because, you know, the wind don't blow every day and the sun don't shine all the time. You got to store that energy to create. That might be an area that Guyana can get into as well. We can do that at university, where you do material science, whatever it takes to do research. Because I'm sure Guyana has the brains to do it, or the diaspora. A brief look at some of the skill sets that we need in Guyana, and basically we're talking about, I've divided up into 4 general areas. We have areas where you have to, you know, go to college, get a master's, and so on for those. Then there are areas that you can you can do that in probably a technical institute, and then there's areas where the companies would actually train. And you know, you look through here, you can see a number of different occupations that we'll all need, from, you know, truck drivers, welders, heavy equipment operators, you know, drafting technologists, crane operators, drilling, people provide all services for that, and we'll talk more about that as we get on. I don't want to go over my time, I think that's the end of my time. Okay, the energy and again, environment, that's one area that we have to pay close attention to in Guyana, because Guyana is unique because of that. I mean, we have pristine conditions in Guyana. It's not polluted in any way. And we want to keep it that way. We want to have, we've got the wildlife in Guyana, turtles and all these. We don't want to mess it up. We really don't. We want to make sure Guyana looks exactly the way it did before all came. And people are concerned, rightfully, about that happening. And I'm sure Exxon's thinking the same thing too. So, I mean, I've worked in oil and gas all my life, and I can say they do their best to maintain places the way they found it and return it to the way they found it. And a spill wouldn't be a nice thing to happen. So, well, we got to be looking at that and making sure that that doesn't happen. But we got to be able, it's got to be able to, as I said, Guyana is unique again because of that rainforest, 85%. And then Guyana also found oil, you got to remember. They found out all the time when we realized that oil is not going to be used forever. It's coming to an end. That's just coming to an end. So those are the 2 unique things that we know. A lot of people have been talking about the contracts we signed and all that, but geez, I think I'm glad we got going with it, and I think we should go with it as fast as we can so we get that revenue that comes from it and don't wait too long. So, and with that, I think that's the end of my slides and my time.
As we transition to our second panel discussion, I would like to welcome our discussant, Dr. Blackmon, who will be giving an analysis on our previous panel, and he will also be giving us some commentary on what to expect on our upcoming panel. Dr. Blackmon is an associate professor of mathematics in the City University of New York. Yes, he has a PhD in mathematics, people. In addition to his many academic appointments, Dr. Blackmon also currently serves as Chief Strategy Officer at Infinity Services, Inc. Everyone, please join me in welcoming Dr. Terence Blackmon.
Good afternoon, folks. I think you can do a little better than that. Good afternoon. So let me, too, on behalf of the Queen's Knowledge Alumni Association, express my sort of gratitude for you being here today and the sense in which the technical difficulties have somehow changed the manner in which the program has been structured. Let me begin in the transition by first thanking Mr. John Campbell the president of QCANY, for the vision to attempt to do this kind of program which aims to inform, to educate, and to broadly kind of engage the diaspora in conversations around, this newfound wealth. As I listen to, so I'm going into my role as discussant, as I listen to Dr. Peters talk about navigating the opportunities and imperatives in Guyana's oil and gas economy, there were a couple of things that came out very, very strongly for me. One, this business is high risk. Two, it requires huge amounts of capital. Three, it requires a tremendous amount of technology. In his second slide, where he described what was happening off the Atlantic shelf, and I had the thought of thinking about how do you do work a mile down in the ocean, and to do that in a way that is completely safe, and to do that in a way that does not destroy the pristine ecology that is Guyana, I think is something that we need to be concerned about. And I wanted to thank Dr. Peters for his comprehensive elucidation of what is actually happening. So I want to kind of nail two places where I think this discussion will go. Dr. Peters attempted to do something which is kind of a trick. It's a hard trick to do. How do we at the same time exploit these carbon resources in a moment when the entire world is shifting away from the use of carbon in this way? How do we do this while at the same time remaining a green economy? How do we do this while at the same time investing in solar energy, investing in wind? And I think this is a very, very tricky discussion. And I really hope that our policymakers are really thinking seriously about this, and I suspect that we will hear some of this in the panel that moves forward. It seems to me it's not so easy to pipe gas to whales and at the same time sort of not have to deal with the environmental effects. And so I think we're going to have a slightly more grown-up conversation about what we need to do. In a sense, I also come down where Dr. Peters has come down. The question is, these are tremendous resources. And how we use these resources to better Guyana's future is also a question that is of vital importance for us. How do we transform the lives of individuals in the country? Now, after Carmona noted, he noted many of the positive things in terms of promoting the ease for doing business. He talked about the facility for establishing businesses and this sort of thing. But I think we're going to have to do much more than that. I think we're going to have to do, if we are going to have the capacity that Dr. Peters described at the end, so that our local content is not just simply a Guyanese face in some place, but actually a Guyanese who's actually engaged in doing the business of oil, then I think we're going to have to do a bit more than simply outlining the steps. I think we're going to have to find ways to educate our population about what it means to start a business. We're going to have to do, I think, more workforce development and training. I think we're going to have to do much more private sector education. How do people become entrepreneurs, and to have sort of things that facilitate the engagement in entrepreneurial activity by our young people. I think we're also going to have to, as I listen, anticipating, thinking about the revenues, this question of our sovereign wealth fund. I think we're also going to have some conversations about governance and transparency and how that resource gets to be, Dr. Richards kept saying, well, this is sort of like Saudi Arabia, it's 750,000 people, so it's a barrel of oil per day per person. And so we might expect to see, as he noted from his experience in Saudi Arabia in 1985, that, folks are driving their Mercedes-Benz in the desert. So I think that as Guyana gets wealthy, we have to think about questions of how equitably that wealth is going to be distributed. And so this is a thought that I want to leave you with. And then the final thought that I want to leave you with is, as I listen to the discussion, the sense in which we are tilting in our entirety towards the oil industry. And so what I would want to leave this audience with, and the audience who's in the virtual space, and the people who think about these things, is to say, we have noted that this is a high-risk, high-capital, extensive technology, long-term investment business. And so we ought not to put all of our eggs in this one basket. I think we ought to be thinking about how we also do our agriculture, how we also do our mining, and how we use these sort of, this windfall, this mighty stroke of luck that we've been bequeathed with, that has come to us, as we noted, over some God looking out for Guyana over millions and millions of years. So how do we use these things to really create a society that is not dependent upon this, that we find a way beyond this resource curse that sort of lurks not so quietly at our door. And so that would be the place I would end. And I would listen for what emerges in the next panel as we think about, yes, oil is very important. Yes, we're very, very fortunate. Yes, it will transform the lives, but as we think about how it transforms our lives, what particular things are we doing to ensure that it transforms us in an equitable manner? And then finally, my last point, let us not put all of our eggs in this basket. We have many other resources that make up Guyana, and most importantly, our people resource, and we have to invest in that. Thank you.
Again, it's my pleasure to introduce our next moderator. Ms. Rosalind Kilkenny McClement is an award-winning journalist and author with more than 30 years experience in the field. She is the executive editor of the Network Journal, a U.S. business magazine for Black professionals and business owners. CEO and publisher of AfricaStrictlyBusiness.com, and author of numerous fiction and non-fiction titles. A Guyanese national, Ms. McClement speaks French and Spanish, in addition to her native English. She has taught in Uganda and the Democratic Republic of Congo for several years and traveled extensively to Africa and Asia as a development expert for the United Nations Development Program. Ms. McClement holds a master's degree from New York University, a bachelor's from the City College of New York, and is an alumna of the Bishop's High School in Guyana. She is also a certified fitness instructor with a black belt in Tai Chi. That piece I didn't know. So in short, she is just Guyanese girl magic. just give a warm welcome on this rainy, cold afternoon in New York to Ms. Rosalind Kilkenny.
We're looking at the imperatives, what it is, as our speaker said, what it is that we have to put in place. What is it that we have to make sure is in place in order for this oil and this gas to leave the transformative society that we're hoping to see. And as we do that, we certainly don't want to neglect the other areas that can also make Guyana a transformative society. My first panelist is an attorney, Mr. Edwin Callender. Callender is the name of the West. Esquire, Guyanese. He's an international energy consultant based in Houston, Texas. Where else? His firm, the Callender Law Firm, BP LLC, specializes in energy and oil and gas law, commercial transactions, business law, and private placements. I'm not going to go through his entire bio. It's so very impressive. It's already in the program and it's also on the website. So, Mr. Callender, the floor is yours. He's going to give us an opening statement and we'll get right into some questions. We need to have you speaking audience.
Thank you, Rosalind. What I want to talk about are the imperatives for success in this sphere. What are the imperatives that are essential for Guyana to succeed? The first thing, I know Dennis touched a little bit on this, it's the oil and gas value chain. I'd like to just put that picture up there so you can visually see what the structure of this business is. And in looking at that, you can identify areas where potential opportunities would arise. Looking back over here in the middle, we've got the exploration, appraisal, reserves development, oil and gas production. Again, I'm not going to go through that again, but we're showing the linkages between those parts and the ultimate use of the oil and gas. So Guyana has both oil and gas. I know first when this business came about, people talked about oil and gas and they were taking it as one product. But you have oil, which is one product, and you have the natural gas, which is a complete other product that is valuable in and of itself. When you produce the oil, you have to take it to the place where it's going to be processed, where it can be used. And in doing so, you have a value chain, and there's a whole lot of opportunity up and down that value chain. Same thing with the natural gas. The natural gas has to be transported first from the source to a processing plant, where you take out liquids that are entrained with that natural gas. Those liquids are valuable products too. The natural gas itself, the dry natural gas, then goes to whatever use it is, whether it's electricity or in use in industrial, consumer, etc. So, it's not working too well for me. Okay, so let me talk about the first thing out here, that is local content. We've heard a lot about that. Before we go into that, Dennis mentioned how risky this business is. And it is risky. So without using seismology to pinpoint in a field that you know should have gas, the success rate is about 10%, maybe 12%. With seismics, it goes up to about 26, 28%. In Guyana's case with ExxonMobil and its discoveries, it skewed that all the way to 90-something%. That's really extraordinary. But what it also means is that that basin has been de-risked. It means that it's no longer risky in that particular block, or any of the other associated blocks, because there's a high degree of success that has already taken place. So that was one of the arguments that was used when people started complaining about the terms of the, thank you, when people started complaining about the terms of the contract that is in place. And that contract is known as a production sharing contract. There are different means by which a host country, such as Guyana, can grant licenses to contractors. In this case, the ExxonMobil case, we have ExxonMobil, Hess, and the Chinese company together. We call them the contractor. So there are many different instruments you can use to grant those concessions. In this case, it's a production sharing contract, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a minute. In some regimes, you have just royalty. You have royalty and taxes, right? And so the royalty case might be a royalty of 16%. That is all the oil that's produced, 16% of it goes to the government. And then after whatever the company makes, they pay taxes on it, which is usually around 30-something% in most countries. Going back to the production sharing contract that Guyana has with the folks out there, the contractor, that production sharing contract goes like this. So you have a royalty of 2%, right? So all the oil that's produced in a given month, 2% of it goes to the government of Guyana. Then there's cost recovery. And what that means is the contractor gets to recover all of their costs. All of their costs. And you'd be surprised what some of those costs are. They get to recover all of those costs, and after they've recovered those costs, then there's profit oil. So after the cost recovery, the profit oil is split 50-50 between the contractor and Guyana. The way the contract is set up, we've got, in any given month, there's a cap for cost recovery that amounts to 75%. So 2% royalty, then whatever remains, 75% goes to cost recovery, and the remaining 25%, and that's 25% of 98%, the remaining 25% is split 50-50. 12.5 to Guyana and the rest to the contractor. So that's how it's divided out. The question is it a fair contract? Is it not a fair contract? Those are questions for a different discussion, but I'm sure you guys will have those questions and we'll try to answer them.